Greetings and a warm welcome to all of you attending Good Vibes, Good Life, where we will be discussing the power of self-love and positive thinking to help you attain the life that you want. And thank you for joining us at the Abu Dhabi International Book Fair. My name is Tamara Clark, and I'm delighted to welcome Vex King, who's joining us virtually all the way from the UK. Good morning, Vex.
Good morning, Tamara. Thank you for having me.
Okay. So we'll start with you. What is your background and what led you on the path of positivity?
Yeah, so basically, my life's been pretty tough from the get-go. So my dad died 6 months after I was born. My family was homeless for roughly 3 years of my life. And then my mum's business with an abusive family member went bankrupt. And then we moved to an area which we weren't very welcome in. I faced endless racism, poverty, and just general hardship. So my life was extremely difficult, and we faced so much adversity. And I just remember wanting to change my life around. So I tried to ask the people around me like what I could do to change my life around, but they would always say the same things like, Vex, this is your reality. You have to accept it. It's not going to get any better for us. Like, if you want to make it in life, you either get an education or you sell drugs or, end up in a gang, and that's the way to success. Otherwise, you just accept this life as it is. And I didn't want that answer. I didn't want to accept that answer, as that was my only avenue to bettering my life for myself and my family. So in my teenage years, I turned to personal development. And I remember going on this website, on this forum, and it was actually like a hip hop forum because I used to love like hip hop music. And there was a section on that website called the Knowledge Corner, and in that corner people would talk about like science, philosophy, and just ways to like better your life. And I remember people recommending books, and there was this one book that was recommended, and it was Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. And people said that this book changed Bruce Lee's life. And I was a big martial arts fan, and it changed loads of other people's lives. So I said to myself, right, I need to read this book and gauge whatever it says inside of it. So I read the book, and I realized that actually a positive mind will give you a positive life. And I thought, right, that sounds pretty good, but I'm not sure if I completely believe it. And I suppose I started my self-development journey there, and I started reading more books. And this is coming from a guy that in school, I completely disliked reading. I would make up book reviews. I just wasn't interested in reading any books at all. And then I realized that actually through reading, there was a path to knowledge and wisdom that I can potentially use to change my life. And that's what I did. I said to myself, I've suffered enough. I've gone through enough in my life, and it's time to change things. And through books and studying iconic individuals, I managed to find a way to change my life around. And that's what books have done for me, and that's where my journey has kind of led to. So now that I write, I'm almost gifting people back what books gifted me.
Wow, that's amazing. And congratulations on the success of Good Vibes, Good Life. It's a Sunday Times #1 bestseller. Can you tell us a little bit about your inspiration throughout your writing process to give us this manifesto on positivity?
Yeah, so the inspiration really comes from my own life. I've read thousands of self-help books, and anyone that reads self-help books, you kind of know that the self-help books are telling you almost the same things in different ways from fresh perspectives. And I think that's why new self-help books will always do well, because they're applicable to the times. Like, the messages are almost always the same, but they're delivered in a fresh way, in a way that's applicable to the time we're living in. And I wanted to put across relatable wisdom, so wisdom that people could actually relate to right now in the 21st century. And I also wanted to fill the book up with these aha moments that I'd gotten from all the books that I read. So my inspiration was really relating the wisdom to my own life. Like, how did I handle certain situations? When I talk about the law of attraction, for example, like, I wanted to talk about it from a way that people could really understand within their own lives, rather than make it this kind of far-fetched, utopic kind of subject. But within the book, there's some key themes. I talk about self-love. I talk about how to manage personal relationships, manifesting your goals, how to discover your purpose. All these questions that I've addressed within the book were questions that I was regularly getting on my Instagram account. So people were asking me the same questions over and over again. And I said to myself, right, I need to put these all into a book, and I need to make sure that they all connect together, so people can kind of make sense of life in the same way that I've kind of made sense of life. And that was really the driving factor behind all the subjects and topics within the book itself.
You mentioned Instagram, and your Instagram is
right.
extremely popular. Can you tell us how social media has helped you to amplify your message of positivity?
Yeah, so with social media, when social media started, almost gaining traction, I saw an avenue to share content, your business, a service, a message with people all over the world through your cellular device or your computer, whatever it was. And I knew I wanted to help people. I wanted to share a message and my ideas about life and the world to help people all around the world. And when I saw like Instagram, for example, really becoming popular, I said to myself, here's a platform, or here's a channel where I can share snippets of wisdom or share reflections from my own life and potentially help people, whether they're based in the UAE, based in the UK or America, Australia, wherever they are in the world. And I thought, let's just go for it. Let's just share things that I've gone through, share my tips and my advice with people on Instagram, and just keep it very real and authentic, rather than telling people what they want to hear. I think it was more about telling people what I thought they needed to hear. And I think when I write, I don't just write words. I like to say that I write emotions, because I'm speaking from the heart. I'm speaking from experience, whether it's my own experiences or experiences of other people and observations that I've made throughout my life. And what I found with Instagram was that my words were resonating with people. Sometimes I was giving a voice to all the silent souls that couldn't be heard, or sometimes I was expressing people's emotions that maybe they couldn't express themselves. So in a sense, I was amplifying a lot of these silent souls. I was giving a voice to people that couldn't be heard, but I was also giving that opportunity for my own voice to be heard by people all over the globe. And as my messages really started resonating with people, my platform started growing. And, I'm very grateful for how much it's grown at the moment. And I actually think that, without social media, I don't think I would have gotten my book deal, because as my platform started growing, a literary agent contacted me and she said, Vex, see how much impact you're making on people's lives. have you ever thought about writing a book? And at that time, I'd already had a manuscript ready. You know, I wanted to release a book. I thought, if I don't get a publishing deal, I'll self-publish. It was all there. And I said, look, it's my dream to write a book. There's all these questions that I keep getting on social media, and I want to put them together in a book so I can help people. And it just unfolded from there. So social media, for me, really, it gave me a chance to be heard, and it's really defined my career as an author.
Okay. Thank you. And continuing on with how you've been able to be a voice to other people and connecting with people on social media, you describe yourself as a mind coach, not to be confused with a life coach. So can you tell us a little bit about that and what it means to be a mind coach?
Yeah, so I'll give you a very honest answer about me becoming a mind coach. So when I was younger, my cousin, she used to come over to my house, and I used to make her run outside from point A to point B. And each time I measure her running time on my Casio stopwatch, and I try and help her beat her previous time. And I was like 10 years old, and at the end of the day, I'd print a certificate out for her to kind of celebrate her achievement. And I just remember always wanting to help people, always wanting to help people prosper and just get the best out of themselves and their lives. So another childhood dream I had, so I'm a Manchester United football fan, not to put anyone off here, I know we just lost a final, but I used to have this dream, and it was a reoccurring dream. And the dream was that one day I would go into the locker room at halftime when Man United might be losing in a final, and I'd motivate the team around me to go on and win. And I thought I'd love to just be a part of that one day. So fast forward to Instagram, I'm sharing these messages online, and then celebrities start contacting me, and they're like, Vex, we love your messages. Do you offer coaching? Because I'd love help for this problem I have. And in that moment, I was just like, wow, I need to do this. And the first person that contacted me was a professional basketball player. So when they contacted me, my mind went back to this dream that I had of going into the changing room where I was like motivating Manchester United to win. And I thought, wow, this dream's coming true. I need to coach them. I'm going to do it. But in my head, I was just like, I've got no coaching experience, no credentials for coaching. I'm just someone that goes online to share their wisdom, their ideas with the world. I have no strategy for this, no structure. I don't know how I'm going to do this, but I'm going to do it, and I'm going to help this person elevate their game. So I went back to them and I was very honest. I said, look, I don't actually have professional coaching experience, but what I do have is passion. What I do have is ideas. What I can help you do is progress in whatever area you want, and I can promise you that. And I said to them, I'll do it for free, but my only non-negotiable is that you pay it forward. So you do something as an act of kindness for someone else if I do this for you for free. And they agreed. So we went ahead, and it was kind of like I was just, I didn't have this structure in place, but I listened to what they wanted. And inside of myself, internally, I said, I know what I can do to help this person. And within the first month of coaching, they doubled their points average, they doubled their assists average, they became the most valuable player of the league for that particular month. And then they got a new contract and increased their salary. So, something amazing happened. And I thought, wow, I'm able to actually help people here. And now, they've gone on and they've created a camp to help kids. So they did actually stick to their word, and they did go ahead and pay it forward. But when this all happened, I said to myself that I have this ability, or at least I believe I have this ability to really help people. And I'm a coach, but I'm not just your regular life coach. what I'm doing essentially here is I'm exercising new ways of thinking. So I said, well, what do I call myself? Because I'm not just a regular mind coach, I'm a life coach, I'm a different type of coach. I'm helping people seek new perspective. And I remember reading this quote and it said, if your dream job doesn't exist, go and create it. So in that moment, I said, you know what, I'm going to call myself a mind coach because, you know, in a way, I'm helping people practice new ways of thinking to elevate their lives. So I just gave myself this term loosely. I'm a mind coach, right? And then one day I said, do mind coaches actually exist? And I realized actually there was only like 1 or 2 mind coaches in the whole world. And they worked with professional tennis players, I think it was. And then all of a sudden, you know, this guy recommended me to his friends and people started recommending me. And, you know, people almost wanted me to become their mind coach. And nowadays, I don't coach as much because I like to think of myself as everyone's mind coach online because I'm always trying to help people and I try and focus on my writing. But, you know, that's how it kind of came about. And since then, you know, I've developed strategies, I've developed new ways of looking at life and new ways of doing things, new tools and techniques. And it's just really, you know, been taken to another level. And now I am working with some of those kind of dream athletes that, you know, I looked up to as almost like a child, and, you know, things have just worked out amazingly.
That's an amazing story of manifesting the job that you wanted. You created it for yourself, and in turn, it's helping a lot of people. In the book, you talk a lot about the power of positive thinking. In fact, you state, I'm certain that a positive mind gives you a positive life. Can we really train our brains? What can we do to put that in action?
Yeah, it's an interesting one with positive thinking, because when we think about positive thinking just rationally, right? So we don't need to, you know, attach the law of attraction or anything spiritual to positive thinking. If you perceive the life in front of you as a positive life, you're going to determine that, you know, your life is positive. So quite rationally, a positive mind does give you a positive life. The hard part is how do we reach that state where we're naturally thinking in a positive way? They say repetition is the way to master any skill, right? So as you repeat stuff, you're practicing it over and over again. And as you practice something over and over again, you start forming these neural connections in your brain, and it becomes your natural response to stimuli, whether it's life events or encounters. That's the way you naturally respond. So one way to actually exercise positive thinking is choosing your response to the things you face within your life. And we can do that and do this every single day as a daily practice. So if something happens in your life, how do you reframe the event to something a little bit more empowering? You're walking down the street and say someone nudges into you. The first thought you might have is, oh my God, you know, that guy or that woman nudged into me, how can they? And you might insult them or whatever it is. But you can take a step back and you can reframe that situation and say, you know, that person bumped into me, might have not been very nice of them, because you're accepting that what they did isn't right. But at the same time, it could have been much worse. They could have bumped into you, could have fallen over and hurt yourself. Or you could say to yourself, you know, they bumped into you, but maybe they're going through a really hard time. Maybe they've lost someone close to them and, you know, they're not thinking straight. Something like that. When you look at the latter, automatically your perception of that event changes, and suddenly you feel a little bit more empowered rather than feeling saddened by what happened. Now, if you practice this every single day, what you tend to find is that when these events started happening, your natural response is to pause and reframe the situation in a way that empowers you. Another thing you can do, and it is very simple, and I completely swear by this, is to encourage a state of gratitude. Now, if you do this every single day, and I've been doing this for years on end. I do this in the morning and do this in the evening, is I just think of things I'm grateful for. And the key is not just to think, right, yeah, I've got a bed to sleep in, I'm happy with it. Think about what your life would mean if that thing's taken away from you. So if you didn't have a house, how would your life be impacted? If you didn't have a partner or something within your life that you see as a blessing, if you didn't have that thing in your life, how would that impact your life? When you take away, when you start thinking of its absence, you start being grateful for its presence. And I think that's how you evoke an authentic state of gratitude. When you evoke that authentic state of gratitude, it's so hard to be miserable or so hard to be saddened, because you can't be in a state of appreciation and in a state of misery at the same time. So again, when you start practicing gratitude over and over again, suddenly you start finding gratitude even in the small moments. You might look outside and think, you might see a plant or a tree and say, I feel grateful for its presence, I feel its energy, something like that. Like, I'm not saying that life's always going to be easy and you should just ignore things that are troubling you, but at the same time, I think there's always a way to almost look on the bright side, and we can train our brains to do that more regularly just by practicing these thought processes and these ideas over and over again.
Okay. Our circumstances can also impact our ability to choose positivity and to do those things frequently. For example, we're living in the era of a pandemic. People are experiencing loss and grief and massive change in huge doses. What would you say to people who might be struggling to maintain a positive mindset through adversity?
Okay, so the first thing I really want to stress is don't ignore how you feel, because that's when you step into the realm of toxic positivity, where you just pretend everything's okay. It's almost like sitting in your house and your house is burning down and you're like, you know what, everything's going to be okay. I'll just think positive and the fire's going to go away. When you feel a certain way, that's your body giving you a signal that something needs attention internally. How you respond to the pandemic, and just remember, every single person's gone through different trauma or different magnitudes of struggle in their life. If I went through the pandemic in the past, for example, when I was homeless or when we had no money and my mom struggled to put food on the table, I would be living a completely different pandemic to what I'm living right now, right? Because my struggles, my circumstances, my environment wouldn't have given me the comfort that I have right now. So in a sense, a lot of us, we do live these privileged lives, but if we feel sad by what's going on outside, it's completely valid. None of us have lived through a pandemic before. No one really knows how to respond or how to get through things. So it's completely valid if you're feeling a certain way through this pandemic. But what we can remember, especially if you're still feeling that way right now, is that you've come so far. In England, we've just completed like our third lockdown. So, we've been through a couple of lockdowns, and by the third lockdown, there were so many people that were mentally exhausted, because when you sever that connection to people and not have the same freedom that you had, life becomes extremely difficult. But what we can remember at that time is that we've got through the first lockdown, we've got through the second lockdown, and we can get through the second and third lockdown because we've done it before. So straight away, that can kind of start shifting your perspective. But the other thing is, and it's so key to remember, is that you can only control so much. I think with the pandemic and the news, and sometimes there's a bit of fear-mongering that goes on, that suddenly we think, oh no, we need to control the situation. We need to be in control of what's happening within the world or within ourselves. But there's only so much that we can do. And sometimes we try and hang on to certain ideas and certain thoughts and certain things. And by grasping onto these things, we start creating this mode of suffering for ourselves. So in a sense, the first thing is accept your reality, accept how you feel, but also let go of the things that you have no control over. Because the more we try to grasp onto these things, the more they're going to have control over us and our emotional state. I know this can be really difficult, but again, having an attitude of gratitude really does help. Sometimes it can shift your perspective, and you need to do this again in a way that doesn't denote the way that you feel. Like, it's okay if you don't feel grateful, because it's completely valid, all your feelings and your emotions, but at the same time, sometimes it's just important to think about how your life might be if you didn't have those particular things. I remember when the first lockdown happened, and I thought, oh God, I had all these plans, right? So when we talk about grieving, not only have some of us lost people, we've lost out on events, we've lost out on holidays, we've lost out on meetups. People are grieving in different ways because we've all felt some kind of loss in some sort of way. And I know there's degrees and magnitudes to loss, but every single person experiences the same kinds of emotions, but we just experience them differently. And I remember thinking I had all these plans for 2020, my writing career, connecting with people, traveling, and I thought, wow, I can't do those things. But then I thought to myself, I'm in a home with electricity, water, I'm sheltered, I live with my wife and my dog. I have all these blessings around me, and actually, I should be thankful for those things. Not to say that I shouldn't feel sad by the losses, but at the same time, just being thankful can really shift that perspective. And I think it's so important during this pandemic or during adversity to just remember that, things are bad sometimes, but things can be so much worse.
Thank you. Of course, we're talking a lot about positivity, and you mentioned the term toxic positivity. Is that a thing? Is it possible for us to be too positive?
I think it's like being overdressed to a party. I don't think there's such a thing as being overdressed. I think if you want to dress nicely and you turn up to a party or an event and you dress very well, amazing. I think where positivity becomes unhealthy is when you ignore how you feel to force positivity. So it's almost like you're in a state of complete denial. This thing doesn't exist. It's almost like someone throws you a ball and you don't like the ball, so you try and get rid of it. You chuck it in the air with great momentum, but eventually that ball's just going to come back to you. So you're actually not getting rid of it. It's always going to be there. It's always going to be within you. I say this in Good Vibes, Good Life. It's almost like keeping poison in your system. So if you try and force positivity, but deep down inside of you that you don't actually feel positive and you're actually just trying to pretend that you're positive, this poison within your system eventually is going to catch up with you. It's going to start hurting you internally. So with toxic positivity, the idea is to actually face what you're feeling rather than trying to ignore what you're feeling. Only when you face what you're feeling and accept that the emotion is valid and it's there, then can you go on to transform that particular emotion and start feeling more empowered. Otherwise, it's just going to catch up with you. And the same with positive thinking. If there's a thought that you have and you try and replace it with something more empowering, but that thought keeps reoccurring, what you tend to find is that thought is governed by a tightly held belief, right? And that tightly held belief is always going to create that particular unconscious thought pattern unless you get to the root of why that belief exists and start doing the inner healing work to rewrite that particular thought pattern and belief. And that's why it's so important to actually go a little bit deeper and start turning inward and start finding the cause. Others, what we're going to have is this band-aid approach. And this band-aid approach basically just covers up the scar for a moment, but it is still there, and we don't know how it arose in the first place. And I think this is why we live in a world. And sometimes I think to myself, did I encourage this by, promoting this good vibes movement? But, one of the most important chapters in Good Vibes, Good Life was actually not ignoring these negative emotions or these negative thoughts, is actually turning inward and start asking yourself, well, what does this mean? And where did they come from? Where do these feelings come from? Is it connected to this belief? And is this belief shaped by something I've experienced in the past? Only once you ask yourself that question and exercise that self-awareness, can you then go on to change things. And that's the only way you can actually encourage spiritual growth.
Thank you. Good Vibes, Good Life teaches us how self-love can unlock our greatness. But you have published a second book since then. I believe it came out in April, called Healing is the New High. Can you tell us how Healing is the New High continues on the message from Good Vibes, Good Life?
Yeah, so just going back to what I said, basically, with Good Vibes, Good Life, it's almost like an outline. Anyone can pick it up and they can create changes in their life. So the principle is raising your vibration, so your energetic state. And the main idea is that the energy you put out into the world is the energy that you kind of receive back. And I reflect on my own life and how that's kind of worked for me. With Healing is the New High, what we're kind of doing in a sense is we are addressing this idea of toxic and healthy positivity and looking at ourselves as a whole, not just a physical body, but a multi-dimensional human being, and seeing that actually there are things within the past that are affecting the way we perceive the world now and the way we look into the future. And until we start addressing those things, those unconscious patterns, we will struggle to find this genuine positivity in our life. What we'll end up doing is encouraging that false sense of positivity. And although nothing's going to go perfect in your life, if you go inward and start finding the root cause of these particular traumatic patterns or these patterns of pain or just these emotional wounds deep within you, you can start changing the way you perceive the world around you. You can start reshaping your global beliefs about the world, your worldwide view. And once your perception changes, you step out into the world with curiosity, with more mental resilience. So when things do challenge you, actually your natural response is that of positivity, or at least something that's more emotionally stable, because you start to respond to events rather than acting on the triggers, rather than reacting. And that's where it's really taking you. So Healing is the New High takes you a step further, so you can start to achieve this sustainable, organic sense of positivity, rather than trying to just hide things away and put it right back to the back of your mind or your body or wherever it is trying to find these unconscious patterns within yourself and then just rewriting them. Because once we start rewriting the patterns in our subconscious mind, which controls 95% of our lives, we will experience much greater lives. And once your energy is naturally at that state, at that higher state, then it becomes so much easier to manifest your goals. It becomes so much easier to go into these interactions and feel good and meet people that resonate with your energy. But it takes work. And sometimes I think, and I know I did this in the past, is that we look for shortcuts. We want quick results. And it can work over time. I've worked with so many people recently, and you know, they feel good for a moment and then they suddenly plateau, because what they did is they suppressed loads of things internally and they tried to just feel good. And, you know, things started manifesting and then suddenly they're like, oh, things aren't manifesting. I'm stuck at the moment. And it's because there's all this energy within themselves that's stuck. It's not moving because they just try to squash it. But what you resist will always persist. It's like you throwing a ball against a wall, it comes back. But the harder you try and, you know, get rid of it, so you throw it really hard, the faster it comes back, and it'll keep coming back the more you try and get rid of it. So we need to actually go inside and start addressing these things. And that's how Healing is the New High extends from Good Vibes, Good Life.
Thank you. Thank you for both of those works of literature to help us to heal and think positively and achieve our best selves. That's the end of our discussion portion of the session. So I'm going to open it up for questions now. We have questions from some of the viewers who are with us virtually. Thank you. Okay. Do you think hypnotherapy is a useful tool in changing people's negative inner narrative?
I think so, because I've not done hypnotherapy myself, and, you know, I wouldn't say I'm an expert on the field, but I do know that you can induce a certain state where you're more programmable. So sometimes people say that you can be in this hypnotic state when you're waking up early in the morning, when there's theta waves in your brain, or at night when those theta waves are present in your brain. And hypnotherapy tries to induce that same sort of state. So your mind becomes almost like a sponge. So if you start feeding it ideas and empowering yourself with certain beliefs or ideas that you desire or that you want to achieve in your life, then your brain starts absorbing them. And I think over time, those ideas can really sink deeply into the subconscious layers of your mind. So I know some people that have had hypnotherapy and that have seen success with it. But ultimately, what I would say to you is, you know, don't knock it until you've tried it. So if you're drawn to it, try it out. And if you don't see any shifts, you know, try something different. If you do see shifts, stick with it, because at the end of the day, if the results are there, like, that's the most important thing.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions? Yes, we have one more coming.
How do you kickstart encouraging positive energy when you are stuck in an apathetic mindset?
Were you able to hear the question?
I think, yes. I think for me, and I'm going to reflect back on my own life, is when I was younger and I was reading these ideas about positivity helping you live a greater life, my initial response was, well, my life sucks. It's full of suffering. It's full of emotional pain. Like, how do I, you know, suddenly ignore all of that stuff to start thinking positively? And I think the most you can do is just take it a step at a time and literally start with just reframing situations. I think that's just the first step, is when you encounter something and you feel this feelingness of uneasiness or stress or whatever it is that's within you, ask yourself if there's a way to see the situation in a more empowering way. Is there a way to reframe either your thought process or your perception so that your response will come from a mode of empowerment rather than a mode of suffering? And it just goes back to that basic principle. And as you start doing that on a day-to-day basis, you start shifting your mindset over time. So always start small, because even with a habit, any habit that you create within your life, like, so, you know, some people do go cold turkey, for example, if they want to quit smoking. Some people can just do it overnight. But what other people do is they replace the cigarette with something else, maybe like an e-cigarette, and then eventually they phase it in. So what you want to do is start approaching life in phases, in small increments. And the first thing you can start with is just reframing situations and asking yourself, actually, how do I look at this particular situation or this interaction with this purpose in a way that makes me feel better? Because when you're working from a mode of empowerment, what you're essentially telling yourself is, this situation isn't that great, but I deserve to move forward from it. And if I view this situation in this particular way, it allows me to move forward with my life.
What can you do to advise children about bullying? You know, if they're being bullied either at school or in other situations, teenagers, how can you help them find positivity when they're feeling so down?
It's important, see, with healthy positivity, it's important to address something in your physical life that isn't right. And bullying is something that isn't right. So, you know, to almost tell a child to just ignore the bullying and think positive isn't the healthiest approach, because that bullying exists. And there's teachers, there's either organizations or governing bodies in place that will provide repercussions or ways to handle bullying. So the first thing I would advise to children, if they are experiencing bullying, is to speak to someone about it, whether that's a peer, an adult, a teacher, whoever it is. Sometimes what we find, and I think this is more for parents, is that children aren't aware that they're being bullied. Because I remember speaking to a nephew, and he came home once and he said to his mums, he was like, "Mummy, two kids, I'm just going to give them fake names, but like Josh and Zach were throwing my glasses around and they were making me play catch with them," right? And he thought it was a game, and the kids made him believe it was a game. But really what they were doing is they were bullying him by throwing his glasses and him trying to get the glasses off them. And that really made me feel sad, because I thought, he doesn't actually know that he's being bullied, and he feels like being teased is something that he has to accept. So sometimes I think it's extremely important, not even sometimes, all the time, it's important for parents to ask their children how their day went, how their friendships are. Is there anything that's troubling them? Is there something that might have not made them feel happy? And we don't want to scare children by saying, that's wrong, you know, that shouldn't have happened. But asking them for clues, because sometimes these clues make us realize that actually this isn't right and something needs to be done. So it's not always that the child needs to speak to the teacher or the child needs to confront you, but sometimes it's that you need to get the information at the child, and then go and speak to the teachers or speak to whoever you need to, whether it's the headmaster, someone within the school with authority that can help alleviate the situation. But at the same time, always reminding the child that although there's people that might not accept who they are, that you do, your family does, there's other friends, there's other people that will accept the child for who they are, no matter how different they appear, no matter what unique traits there are. It's always reminding the child, especially to the age of 7, because to the age of 7, they're still forming all these new neural connections in their brain. And you know, it's billions that they're creating. And sometimes their rational brain hasn't developed to the full extent. So it's just giving that feeling of being loved, and just remembering that they are loved and they are supported, and that you're always there for them.
Another question's come in about positive or not negative body image, and how can particularly females deal with the sort of pressure on them on social media to look, you know, slender, to look beautiful, to always look perfect, when actually people are not perfect. How can they manage that and remain positive when maybe they're not a size 10 and they don't have false eyelashes, etc.?
It's a good question. I always feel bad answering this question on behalf of women, but I think, you know, it's not just an issue that women face. It's also now an issue that men face, because I went on my Explore page the other day and I saw men getting, certain treatments and looking a certain way. And what we've done online almost is we've created images of what we believe beauty should look like. And we follow all these Instagram pages and feeds, and as we scroll down them, we see people praising other people for how they look. And we think, well, if they're getting praised for how they look, that we must look like that, or we must do certain things. And sometimes we're like, well, I can't afford that treatment, or I don't believe in doing that, or I don't have enough money to have those skin products. What I found myself as an influencer is that you have to take social media with a grain of salt, because what you see online is almost like a line out of a book, right? That line out of the book cannot represent the whole story within that book. That line is just that line. And what people show, we've all heard this saying that an Instagram feed is just someone's highlight reel. So someone's posting their best moments, they're posting their best selfies in the best lighting, but also there's a story that goes behind that selfie, right? So it might be that they've had surgical procedures. It might be that they've used X, Y, and Z products. It might be that they've tampered with the image, that they've manipulated it. They might have edited it on Facetune or on Photoshop. We don't know these things. So for us, it's very important to exercise that self-awareness and say to ourselves, this picture is fantastic, it looks great, it's aesthetically pleasing, but we don't know the full story or extent behind that particular picture. And I also feel like if you're following a page that doesn't contribute to your algorithm of happiness, then it's completely okay to unfollow that particular page or that public figure. If you're following someone that makes you feel insecure or some sort of way, it's okay to distance yourself from that particular feed or that particular person, so then you can go away undistracted and work out why you might have felt that particular way. All of it comes down to being aware of ourselves, our energy, and also being aware that no one's perfect within this world. A lot of the time when we talk about beauty, there was a famous celebrity recently, and she went viral because she posted an image of herself accidentally, I think, or it got shared where it wasn't edited. What we have to realize, and I've working with celebrities, I know this firsthand, is say a celebrity starts growing their platform or they become famous and people suddenly say, your lips are too small. You suddenly feel insecure about your lips, or you might have always felt insecure about your lips, and now suddenly someone's diverted all that attention to your lips and you feel paranoid, or you feel like you won't be accepted by other people unless you change your lips. So then you might go through a procedure where you enhance the aesthetic of your lips and you might make them bigger. That person, because they have a platform, what they're suddenly doing without realizing is that they're encouraging other people to then get the same cosmetic procedure because other people are looking at them and feeling insecure. So initially that person felt insecure about their lips, so they changed their lips, and then the people viewing them felt insecure looking at them, so they go ahead. And this cycle perpetuates and it goes on and on and on and on. And sometimes we just have to remember that people might have changed themselves because they didn't accept the way they look, they didn't accept the way they feel in their own body. And if they want to make those changes, that's completely okay. But a lot of the time, we're so focused on this ideal of beauty, not realizing that this ideal of beauty is always going to change. If you look at beauty, what beautiful meant in the 90s and what beautiful means now, you'll see a completely different image. And if we try and keep up with that image, throughout our lives, we're never going to be happy and we're never going to be able to accept ourselves because it's always changing. And that's why it's so important to work within yourself. And Healing is the New High will definitely take you there, because it'll start addressing some of these beliefs that govern these views that you have, or this perception that you have of yourself.
How can failure be dealt with positively?
I think it was Richard Branson that said that failure is actually essentially just feedback. So you can say, well, if I fail an exam, I failed. And yeah, you failed, but can you try again? Is there an option to resit that exam? Is there an option to do something different? I've failed in my life over and over again. Even with writing, even with little businesses that I've had, I've failed multiple times. But if you think of the failure as feedback, then you can reevaluate the way you're doing certain things and take it on as wisdom and think, right, if this isn't working, how can I do something better? How can I change things around? How can I make changes that favor what I want to achieve, or things that will help me get to where I want to be? Failure is never the end unless you accept it as a complete loss. And I think that's the most important thing, is that failure is always going to exist. We've always failed, but because we failed, we've learned to succeed. When you're a child and you're walking and you topple over, you don't think, right, I've toppled over, that's it. I'm not gonna attempt to get back up and walk. You're so adamant on walking that you get yourself back up and you try again. And I think failure can actually be a beautiful thing when you think of it as something that's just giving you information back on ways you can adapt either your method, your thinking, or maybe ways to actually look for more information or more people that can help you achieve what you want to do. So using that one particular line, using failure as feedback, can really create that internal shift that then helps you get to where you want to be in life.
We have time for one more question.
Do you think faith plays a part in developing a positive mindset?
Most definitely. We all have different types of faith, whether it's faith in God, faith in a better tomorrow, faith in the universe, whatever it is. I think faith makes things possible, and I know that's biblical, but it's absolutely true. What a lot of us tend to do is we either tend to pick fear or faith, right? So we think of the future and we start worrying about something that hasn't even happened. And we're like, oh, what if this goes wrong? Or what if this doesn't take place? And that's really playing on your fear. But that particular thing that you're worrying about hasn't even existed. It doesn't even exist yet. It's only happening within your mind. So when they say faith is blind, well, so is fear. You're thinking about something that could potentially go wrong that hasn't happened yet. But faith is doing the exact same thing. It's asking you to believe in something that hasn't happened yet. What does fear do? Fear can make you feel sad. It can inhibit your decision making. It can sometimes even stop you from taking action or making a particular move. Whereas faith makes you believe. It says, actually, there might be something better out there, and I can act on that. I can move forward on this particular thing. So faith for me is instrumental with anything in life, because you always have these two options, fear or faith. Both ask you to believe in the unseen. Which one will you pick? The one that helps you move forward in your life, or the one that keeps you back?
Thank you to everyone for submitting questions. I know we couldn't get through all of them, but we have a limited amount of time. with Vex. That brings us to the end of this session. Thank you so much for joining us online, and to everyone here attending the Abu Dhabi International Book Fair. I would also like to thank the Arabic Language Center for organizing the book fair, as well as our volunteers and AV team for helping this session run so smoothly. And last but definitely not least, thank you, Vex, our wonderful speaker, for making this such an enjoyable session. Okay.
Thank you for having me.